of a metal chain or piece of jewelry in that incident?
Yeah, so during the altercation, you can see one of the defendants, the male defendant, remove a large piece of jewelry from around his neck, a chain or a metal thick rope that was used during the struggle. So I can't get into the details of what happened with that, but it was used as part of the attack.
The court documents say he used that to put the sergeant in a chokehold, is that right?
No, that's incorrect. Court documents say the sergeant was placed in a chokehold.
Placed in a chokehold, okay.
Yes.
Was did he swing the chain freely, or did he wrap it around his fist? And
I can't get into those type of details. That's part of the investigation.
The sergeant used a taser, which was initially reported in the release. Did that strike anyone, or what happened with the taser when he discharged it?
Yeah, we feel that it did strike the male defendant, but it was not effective, unfortunately.
has there been any blood work on either defendant to determine their degree of intoxication, if there's other drugs involved?
I didn't turn that question over to Kevin. I don't believe we've.
There's been no direct blood testing that I know. I know it's procedure for the jail to do a screening for drugs and alcohol. My understanding is they were not initially cooperative with that process, however, may have ultimately done that.
When we spoke to the prosecutor yesterday, you had indicated, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there had been an autopsy done, but perhaps you did not get the report as yet to know the exact cause of death.
Yep.
Has that been determined yet, what the cause of death was?
It has not. The autopsy has been done, as you mentioned, but the report has not been released.
Was that Monroe County, or who did the autopsy?
A Monroe County medical examiner performed the autopsy.
You discussed, that there's CPR and that civilians and security staff were directly involved. I wonder if you could elaborate on who performed CPR, whether civilian or security or Batavia Downs staff, and also were civilians directly involved in tangling with the defendants, and then also you described additional officers being involved when they got on scene and having a physical altercation. Is there any charges related to that with those officers? Could there be, and were any of those officers hurt?
To my knowledge, no other officers were hurt during this altercation. I will leave the charging issue up to the DA's office. However, there were several members of Batavia Downs security staff, as well as bystanders, that were both performing CPR on and off, as well as holding the defendants down in an effort to help us get them into custody. So it was the answer is everybody. Yeah.
Are you able to clarify just a little bit on the body camera? I understand the sergeant wasn't wearing a body camera, or it wasn't rolling. Were responding officers, did they have body cameras on? Were those turned on?
Yes, the responding officers all had body cameras on. My understanding is Sergeant Sanfratello was not wearing one.
He was not wearing one.
District Attorney, I wonder if you could, the charge that you've levied is aggravated manslaughter. For the public watching, may not be familiar with the legalese. Can you explain what that implies, what you're getting at?
The aggravated aspect of the manslaughter is because the deceased Sergeant Sanfratello was a police officer.
And manslaughter says what?
In this particular case, it's intent to cause serious physical injury, causing death of a police officer.
The arrest report mentioned deadly weapon with the charge. Is that just statutory language, or are you considering the chain deadly weapon?
It's a statutory language, but the chain is the focus of that language.
We asked yesterday with the deputy if there's a possibility of further charges here. What would you say to that? I think you indicated there might be a grand jury that would rise to possibly with this case.
Well, a grand jury will certainly review the evidence. The evidence is not in. We have the investigation, as you just heard, is ongoing. Until the investigation is concluded, we cannot predict what additional charges, if any, might be filed in connection with this case. So we'll wait to see.
The two defendants were arraigned yesterday. Are they still in custody?
My understanding is they still are in custody on bail.
Sheriff, I don't know if this is a question for you, or Chief, for you. Could you describe and help us understand what the two defendants were doing prior to this incident that got them removed from the casino? What were they doing?
They were in the area, as I mentioned earlier, 34 Rush bar. They were causing a disturbance within the bar. The staff there refused to serve them. They were asked to leave. They continued to cause that disturbance, requiring assistance from Batavia Downs security and Sergeant Sanfratello.
There was a burglary charge levied against Ms. Wilcox. Why? I guess why? What was the need for the burglary charge?
Well, the burglary charge itself is stemming from her being combative with the officer and the security staff at Batavia Downs when she was asked to leave, thereby indicating that she was remaining unlawfully in that building.
And Sheriff, in the initial report, it said that Sergeant Sanfratello was there on special assignment,
Yes.
I believe. Had there been issues at the casino prior to this, anything specific with either the defendants or the staffing levels with casino security, anything like that? Why was he on special assignment?
We have an agreement with Batavia Downs for weekends to have a uniformed officer on duty as a deterrence, basically. We took that on late fall last year. I'm sorry, what was the rest of your question?
Just why he was there and if he was the only one that was on special assignment.
He was the only one that was there.
So that evening, if there was several events going on, there was an MMA fight and there was a concert. There was a lot of people there. Any requests from the Downs for extra patrols because of the events that were ongoing?
Sheriff, how do you think Mr. Elmore's actions contributed directly to Sergeant Death? I'm sorry for that.
To Sergeant Sheftel's death,
To his death, yeah.
I think I would.
Well,
the
that is part of the investigation, and that's certainly going to be significantly answered when we get an autopsy report. We can't really address at this point the mechanics of the death, so we'll have to wait on that.
Kevin, yesterday after court, Mr. Elmore said, quote, "My life over." Would you consider that an admission of guilt, and is that an admissible statement that can be used against him?
Well, any statement that he makes spontaneously, whether it's in the course of the crime or his detention thereafter, including a court, can be used, in my opinion, should it become relevant at a later trial.
Would you consider that an admission of guilt, or is that something to further examine?
I would consider that an admission that he's done something that he regrets deeply.
Can you talk about the timeline here? From what point were the two defendants here told to leave, and then at what point were first responders on scene to try to revive the sergeant?
That's not something I can talk to at this time. I don't know if the sheriff can or not.
It was within minutes. The two subjects were asked to leave the bar area just minutes before CPR was in progress.
There were several fights going on, while I was there for 20 minutes, even after while you guys were there. Is this fighting, an issue there?
Not to my knowledge.
No.
Called there?
No, I think this goes back to the question that was asked there. We've had minimal complaints at TV Downs. Nothing ever to this extreme or fights.
I guess furthermore too, how long was that altercation between the defendant and the sergeant to the point where he became unresponsive?
It lasted 2 to 3 minutes, the altercation before the sergeant became unresponsive.
Can you talk about Mr. Elmore's background? I think there have been reports about his criminal record in the past. Can you say anything more about that?
He is known to law enforcement.
In what way, can you say?
We've had contact with him in the past.
Does he ever threaten the police officers for this?
I don't know. I'd have to review that.
Kevin, when I was in court yesterday, course, Mr. Robertson represented you, and I don't want to misstate anything because I couldn't really hear well, but there was a discussion about orders of protection, and I thought I heard something relevant, and I know they were for Mr. Sergeant Sanfratello's family, and I couldn't exactly hear what Joe said, but something about, was there something about threats to family from Elmore's family or friends? I know the order of protection covered third-party contract. If you just address, are there issues with people associated with Mr. Elmore and the Sanfratello family?
I have been advised that there were some statements made, the content of which or the degree of the statements themselves, I'm not aware of, but they were sufficient for us to ask for orders of protection, more of as a prophylactic measure to make sure that there's no contact.
Sheriff, are you able to give our viewers a little more of an idea of who Sergeant Sanfratello was and anything you might want to add just about him and his life and his character?
Oh, wow. Unbelievable person. I know Tommy since he began. He was just an incredible human being. He was always there for everybody else. He had many important functions here in the department. He ran our civil department. He was on the State Sheriff Association accreditation program as an assessor. He oversaw our Darien Lake details. As you know, we have many concerts out there, many thousands of people. He ran them flawlessly. Tommy was one that, you counted on. And if Tommy was involved, I didn't have to worry about anything.
Ian is here. Would you like to say anything about his father?
Well, we're going to get to that. Okay.
I'd like to add that I also have known Tom since he first hit the road, and we talked on a regular basis about cases and issues. He'd often call and say, I think I know the answer, and he always did. But he never lost his enthusiasm for the job, for what he did. And he was a very good police officer, and he was a better man. So we will all suffer a loss for a long time to come, and we will miss him dearly. I'd also like to express my thanks for the community's support thus far, the outpouring of support not only for the Sanfratello family, but in the assistance of this investigation.
Is there any possibility that there will be a change of venue for this case at all down the line, you think?
I can't predict that.
Sheriff, how is your office doing after this?
I would say on the surface, everybody's holding up, but I don't think it's really hit home yet. We have a funeral to go through. All in all, I think everybody's doing the best they can. Again, the support that we've gotten from the community, from other police agencies, City of Batavia Police Department, has been unbelievable. So we're working through it. We've had counselors involved. We had some meetings the other night with department members, and we will continue to have those.
Sheriff, is there any indication that drugs or alcohol were an element in the suspect's alleged behavior?
I think alcohol, I know alcohol was involved the other night, but drugs or whatever, I have no clue.
And Chief, you would put out a request for more video from the public or anything that you mentioned, the QR code.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people are thinking, okay, it's a casino. There's going to be tons of cameras everywhere. What would you say you need further from the public? Is it more definitive, or what are you looking for at this point?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. There's a ton of video. It's a casino. We do know that. We did, with cooperation from the Batavia Downs, get all of that into our possession. However, any video that we can get from any angle is important to us to identify potential witnesses in other actions that may have occurred that may have been outside of the cameras of the casino itself. So that is extremely important to us to be able to identify anything else that's out there.
Do we know if there was a relationship between the two defendants?
it's my understanding they're in a relationship currently.
And then Sheriff, would you be able to talk more about the memorial out front here? We were by the patrol car yesterday, and there were only a couple bouquets of flowers, and now it's just filled with all these flowers and gifts in honor of him.
That was something that was brought up by one of our members that he's seen in the past. It's another tribute to Tommy. As you can see, it's gained a lot of momentum. The community is really behind us, and it's a demonstration of that. We'll have that out there for the rest of the week. So whoever wants to contribute to it.
My impression, even before this, is that Sergeant Batavia is one of those rare individuals that has like almost no enemies. Everybody seems to like him. And would you address, what about his personality to make him so likable?
I think you can go back to even his early years. He started out as a EMT in an ambulance, then went on to become a volunteer fireman with the Alexander Fire Department. Started his career here at the Sheriff's Office as an emergency services dispatcher, went on to the road patrol. So I think that really, you look at Tom Sanfratello, and that's what he did. He served our community, even from, I think he was a late teenager when he started as an EMT on an ambulance. So I think that goes right to Tom's character.
Tommy never said no. You know, if you needed something, Tommy was there. It didn't matter who you were, what time of day or night it was. If he could help you, he'd help you. And, I think the guys always knew him as a resource too. You know, if they had something they weren't quite certain of, you know, okay, who do we have? Let's ask Tommy. Tommy will know. And, yeah, he's gonna be missed.
I just
Sheriff,
add
what
that
would you
goes
say
for all.
about the memorial service? I mean, I know usually there are other elements of law enforcement who want to take part and be there, and sometimes there are processions. Has anything been thought about that?
Well, we expect a large crowd. As with any death of a police officer, you know, it's a brotherhood. You know, we expect to see, you know, many police agencies there. It's going to be at the call arena out at the Genesee County calling hours and the actual service.
I have a follow-up question to that, but I think the chief wanted to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on what the sheriff said. I mean, Tommy was a resource for every law enforcement officer in this county, not just within the sheriff's office. I mean, I personally called Tom on many occasions to ask for advice on something, whether it dealt with a civil matter or whatever. He never said no. He always answered his phone. One of the first guys I ever met when I got to Batavia, just a great guy. And you know, just a snippet from the videos is before this encounter occurred, Tom was talking to people within the casino and he was smiling and laughing with them. I mean, that's just the personality that Tom had.
My follow-up question, and this is more for planning purposes, is if I'm remembering correctly, and I didn't go back and look this up, but when for Deputy Ford Narrow, it was in a church, smaller venue. I believe the media was outside. Call arena is much bigger. Are we going to have access to the service, or are we going to remain outside? And I'm just not.
We're still
either
working.
way. I'm just wanting that for planning purposes.
We will have a staging area for media. Whether or not we can get you inside, that hasn't been determined yet.
Is this for both the visitation and celebration of life, or just one?
I would say for both.
Okay.
I'd like to wrap this up. Tommy's son, Ian, is here. Son Ian works for us now. He's been with us as a correction officer. Ian has a statement he'd like to make. He is not going to be answering questions, so please respect that. Ian, you want to come up here?
Good morning. First, I would like to take the time to thank everybody who has reached out to my family with their condolences and support, the countless people who have dropped off food to my family, and most of all, the enormous law enforcement community for all the support we have gotten. Secondly, I would like to address something that I saw from yesterday's court coverage. I know my father would not want any threats of any kind being made to the family of the suspects or the suspects themselves. He would know justice will be served in the correct way. Lastly, I want everybody to know my dad My dad was one of a kind. An amazing dad, son, brother, and coworker. He loved my sisters, Lexi and Kyla, with all of his heart and loved to spend time with us. I know we will all cherish the memories we have with him. He will never be forgotten, and he will be missed immensely by all that had the chance to not only know him, but talk to him. And he will always be loved. Thank you.
Okay, again, I thank you all for coming. I hope we, were able to answer some of the questions you had. And we'll move on from here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Son's first name?
I'm sorry.
What was the son's first
Ian.
Ian? I-A-N.
The handout here, if you guys want to take this, it's also up on our Crime Watch page. So it did get released in a press release yesterday.